the chapter in Ayodhya Kanda. And this begins with the meeting of Bharat in the forest, meeting Guha. And the conversation is with them in the forest at this time. So, and this will be Guha speaking. Even a Paraya, a Sabara, a Kasi, the stupid barbarian, and the vile Kola and Kirata get supremely sanctified and get renowned through all the spheres by uttering the name of Rama. It is no wonder it has been so for ages. Who has not been exalted through contact with the hero of the Raghu race? In this way the gods glorified Rama's name, and the people of Ayodhya rejoiced as they heard the praise. Having thus met Sri Rama's friend, Guha, Bharat lovingly inquired after his health, welfare, and happiness. Seeing Bharat's amiability and affection on that occasion, the Nisada forgot all about himself, his bashfulness. Love and soul's delight grew, and he stood gazing at Bharata with unwinking eyes. Collecting himself, he bowed at Bharat's feet again, and with joined palms lovingly submitted. Now that I have beheld your lotus feet, which are the very fountain of happiness, I have accounted myself blessed for all time. And now, my Lord, by your supreme grace, my welfare is assured for millions of generations. Remembering my doings and my descent on the one hand, realizing the Lord's greatness on the other, he who does not devote himself to Sri Rama's feet has been befooled in this world by providence. False, cowardly, and evil-minded and low-born as I am, and cast off from society as well as from the fold of the Vedas in every way, I have become the ornament of the world ever since Sri Ram took me for his own. Seeing his affection and hearing his humble submission, Bharat's younger brother Satrughna embraced him next. The Nishada chief then greeted all the dowager queens in polite and respectful terms, mentioning his name each time, treating him on the same footing as Lakshmana. They gave him their blessing. May you live happily for millions of years. The men and women of the city were as glad to see Nishada chief as if they saw Lakshman, and said, "He has surely reaped the reward of his existence in that our beloved Rama folded him in his arms." Hearing them extol his good fortune, the Nisada chief led them with a cheerful heart. Receiving a signal from him and learning their master's will, all his attendants dispersed, and in the houses, in the foot of trees, in the ponds, orchards, and groves, they made room for the guests to take up their lodging. When Bharat beheld the town of Sringaverapura, all his limbs were overpowered with emotion. Leaning on the Nisada chief, he presented a goodly sight. It appeared as if meekness and love had taken a living form. In this way, Bharat, with all his army, went and saw the stream of the Ganga, which purifies the whole world. He made obeisance to the ghat where Sri Ram had bathed, and said his prayers, and his soul was enraptured as if he had met Sri Rama himself. The men and women of the city bowed low. They were glad to see the divine stream. Taking a dip in the river, they begged with joined palms to be favored with abundant love for Sri Ramachandra's feet. Bharat exclaimed, "Mother Ganga, your sands are delightful to all, and the very cow of plenty to your devotees. With joined palms, therefore, I ask you only one boon, spontaneous love for the feet of Sita and Rama. In this way, after taking a dip into the Ganga and receiving his guru's commands, and on learning that all of his mothers had finished their bath, he had the tents shifted. The people took up their lodgings at different places, and Bharat made inquiries about all. After worshipping the gods and taking leave of them, the two brothers, Bharat and Satrughna, went to Sri Rama's mother, Kaushalya. Bharat showed respect to all his mothers by kneading their feet and speaking to each in polite terms. Then, entrusting his brother with the service of his mothers, he himself summoned the Nishada chief and went hand in hand with him, his body overpowered with the excess of love. He asked his friend to show him the spot and thereby soothe the agony of his eyes to some extent, where Sita and Sri Rama had slept at night. Even as he spoke, the corners of his eyes were filled with tears. The Nishada chief was distressed to hear Bharat's words and presently took him to the spot. Beholding a lovely litter of kusa grass, he paced around it clockwise, made of love which could not be described in words. He saw there a few gold spangles which he placed on his head and treated them on a par with Sita. With tears in his eyes, a heart full of remorse, he spoke to his friends in sweet accents. These spangles have lost their charm and appear lusterless due to their separation from Sita. Even as the people of Ayodhya, both men and women, are spent through sorrow. To whom shall I liken her father, Janak, who in this world is a master of asceticism and enjoyment both? And she had for her father-in-law Dasarat, the son of the solar race, who was the envy even of the Lord Indra, and her beloved Lord is no other than Lord Sri Ram, from whose glory all the great ones have derived their greatness. Even as I gaze on the litter used by Sita, the jewel among virtuous women devoted to their Lord, my heart does not break in horror. It is harder than adamant, my God. And my younger brother Lakshmana is so comely and worth fondling. Never was there such a brother, nor is there, nor will be. Beloved of the people and the darling of his parents, he is dear as life to both Sita and the hero of the Raghu's line. Nay, he is so delicate of frame and tender of disposition, and his body has never been exposed to hot winds. Yet he is bearing the hardships of every kind in the woods. Oh, my breast has outdone millions of thunderbolts. As for Sri Ram, he has illumined the world by being born in it. He is such an ocean of beauty, amiability, joy, and excellences. Sri Rama's disposition is the delight of the people of Ayodhya and his own family. Much more of his speech and agreeable manners and modesty of behavior. Millions of Sharadas, goddesses of speech, and hundreds of millions of Sesas are unable to reckon up the virtues of the Lord. The jewel of the Raghu line, who is bliss personified, and a mind of joy, blessings, sleeps on the ground, spreading the kusa grass on it. The ways of providence are inexorable indeed. Sri Rama had never heard any mention of sorrow. The king, our father, tended him like the tree of life. Nay, all the mothers cherished him day and night, even as the eyelids protect the eyes, or the serpent guards the gem on its head. The same Rama now wanders through the forest on foot, living on bulbs and roots and fruits and flowers. Accursed is Kaikeyi, the root of evil, who turned hostile to him, her own husband, who was the dearest object of her life. The twice accursed is my own wretched self, the ocean of sin and the occasion of all trouble. While God created me as a blot on my family, my wicked mother has made me the enemy of my master. Hearing this, the Nisada chief lovingly comforted him. Why should you lament in vain? Sri Rama is dear to you, and you are dear to Rama. This is a settled fact, and the blame rests with an adverse fate. Cruel indeed are the doings of an adverse fate, which drove Mother Kaikeyi mad. The Lord reverently praised you again and again that night. There is no one, says Tulasidas, so supremely dear to Sri Rama as you are. I declare this on oath, and therefore be assured that all will end well in the end, and take courage in your heart. Sri Rama knows the heart of all. Nay, he is the embodiment of tenderness, affection, and compassion. Considering this, summon courage in your heart. Please go and take rest. The men and women of the city sallied forth to see the place where Sri Rama had slept one night, much distressed at heart. Pacing around the spot clockwise, they made obeisance to it and blamed Kaikeyi in their heart's content. Tears rushed to their eyes again and again, and they reproached cruel fate. Some would praise Bharat's love, while others said the king had vindicated his affection. They would reproach themselves and praise the Nisada chief. Who can describe their confusion and woe? In this way, they all kept vigil overnight, and at daybreak, the passage across the river began. The Guru was put on a good and handsome boat, and all the mothers on another newly built one. In an hour and a half, everyone was taken across. When Bharat had alighted, he made sure that all had come. Having finished the morning duties, Bharat adored his mother's feet and bowed to his head to the preceptor, and keeping a party of the Nishadas ahead, started the whole host. He made the Nisada chief lead the troop, and then started the palanquins carrying the queen mothers, and summoning his younger brother, told him off as their escort. The Guru proceeded next, along with the other Brahmanas. He himself then went forth on foot, while empty saddle-wise led by the bridle along with him. Again and again his faithful servant said, "Be pleased, sire, to mount your horse." But Bharat refused. Sri Rama has gone on foot, while chariots and elephants and horses are intended for me. Hearing his polite speech, all his servants melted out of a feeling of self-disparagement. Bharat entered the limits of Prayag. The area surrounded the confluence of the Ganga and Yamuna near Allahabad in the afternoon. Overflowing with love, he cried, "Rama, Sita, Rama," even as he went. I have no liking for wealth, nor for religious merit, nor for sensuous enjoyment, nor again do I seek the state of perfect and perpetual calm. Birth after birth, let me have devotion to Sri Rama's feet. This is the only boon I ask, and naught else. Let Sri Rama take me for a wicked fellow, and let the people call me an enemy of my preceptor and master. All the same, by your grace, may my devotion to the feet of Sita and Sri Ram grow day by day. The cloud may neglect the Kathā bird all its life, and on its asking, water may be discharged, thunderbolt and hail, but the bird will fall in the estimation of others if it ceases to call out to the cloud. It will gain in every way only by intensifying its love for the latter. Just as gold gets brighter by being put into the fire, even so the lover shines by sticking to his vow of devotion to the feet of his most beloved Lord. In response to Bharat's prayer, there came a sweet benedictory utterance from the midst of the Triveni. Dear Bharat, you are pious in every way, and your love for Sri Rama's feet is unbounded. In vain do you harbor depressing thoughts in your mind. There is no one so dear to Rama as you are. A thrill ran through Bharat's body, and his soul rejoiced to hear the agreeable words of the deity Triveni, exclaiming, Bharat is praiseworthy. The inhabitants of Prayag, including anchorites, religious students, householders, and recluses, were transported with joy. Same persons gathered together and said one to another, Bharat's affection and amiability are artless and genuine. Hearing of Sri Rama's charming virtues, he came to the great sage Bharadwaja. The sage saw him falling prostrate before him and looked upon him as his own good luck personified. Running up and lifting him, the sage clasped him to his bosom and gratified him by bestowing his blessing on him. Offered a seat by the sage, he sat down with his head bent low, as if he would run away and hide his face in a den of bashfulness. He felt much perturbed at the thought that the sage might ask him any question. Seeing his amiability and confusion of mind, the sage said to him, Listen, Bharat, I have already heard everything, but we have no control over the doings of fate. Be not distressed at heart by the thought of what your mother has done. It is no fault of Kaikeyi, dear child. It was the goddess of speech that deluded her mind. Nobody would approve of it even if I said so, for the wise recognize worldly opinion as well as the judgment of the Vedas. By singing your unsullied glory, however, the world and the Vedas both will be exalted. The world as well as the Vedas admit it, that everyone says that the king's son, he alone gets the throne on whom his father bestows it. The king who is above all true to his vow would have called you and bestowed the kingdom on you, and this would have brought him joy, religious merit, and glory. But the root of all the trouble was Ram's exile to the forest, and the whole universe was pained to hear it. It was, however, as fate would have it. Much as the foolish queen did wrong, she now repents for it. But he who lays the least blame for it on you is vile, ignorant, and wicked. Even if you accepted the sovereignty, no blame would attach to you, and even Rama would be gratified to hear of it. But what you have done now is excellent. Your standpoint is quite justified, for devotion to Rama's feet is the root of all choice blessings in the world. And that is your wealth and life, nay, your vital breath. Who is then so highly blessed as you? This, however, not to be wondered at in your case, who are the son of King Dasarat and the beloved brother of Rama. I tell you, Bharat, there is no one held so dear in his heart by the chief of Raghu's line as you. Lakshmana, Rama, and Sita most fondly praised you the whole night. I came to know the secret only when they were bathing at Prayag. They would feel overwhelmed with love for you. The chief of the Raghu's line cherishes the same love for you as a fool does for a life of ease in this world. This is, however, no great tribute to the hero of the Raghu's race, who cherishes the whole family of the suppliant. As for yourself, Bharat, my opinion is you are the very incarnation of love for Ram. What to your mind constitutes a slur on you is a lesson to us all. The present occasion has proved very propitious for preparing the elixir in the form of devotion to Ram. Your glory, dear child, is a new type of spotless moon, as it were, while Rama I'll continue. Here is an assembly of the sages. We stand at a place which is known as the king of sacred places. Great harm will come to a man if he states even a fact on oath at such a place. If one tells a lie there will be no greater sin and depravity. I speak out the truth, knowing as I do that you are all wise, while the Lord of the Raghus has access to the inmost recesses of one heart. Do not mind. I am not sinful for what my mother has done, nor am I troubled at heart over the thought that the world will look upon me as mean. I fear not lest I should spoil my future life, nor do I grieve over my father's death, whose meritorious deeds and fair renown shine forth throughout the universe. Who has sons like Rama and Lakshmana, and who quitted his frail body as a result of a separation from Ram? Thus, there is hardly any occasion for lamentation on his account. What pains me is the dressing themselves as hermits, Sri Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita, roaming from forest to forest without shoes on their feet, clad in deerskins, living on bare fruits, reposing on the ground spread with kusa grass and leaves, and halting under trees. There they ever endure the cold and sunshine, rain and storm. It is this burning agony which is ever consuming my breast, so that I feel no appetite by day and get no sleep at night. For this fell disease there is no remedy. I have mentally ransacked the whole world. My mother's evil counsel was like a sinful carpenter who used my interests as an adze and fashioned out of the inauspicious wood of discord a destructive magical contrivance, and muttering the terrible malevolent spell of Sri Ram's exile for a fixed term of 14 years, and planted it in the soil of Ayodhya. It is for my sake that she employed this infamous contrivance and brought ruin to the whole world. This calamity will cease only when Rama returns. By no other means can Ayodhya thrive again. The sage Bharadwaja was gratified to hear Bharat's words, and everyone applauded him in ways more than one. Grieve not much, dear child. All your woes will disappear the moment you behold Rama's feet. And after comforting him thus, the chief of the sages, Bharadwaja, said, Be my beloved guest, and deign to accept the bulbs and roots and flowers that we may offer you. On hearing the sage's word, Bharat was troubled at heart, for he was faced with a hard puzzle at a difficult time. Then, realizing the importance of what the elders say, he adored the sage's feet and replied with joined hands, Your orders must be respectfully obeyed. This is my paramount duty, my lord. Bharat's reply pleased the great sage, who called his trusty servants and pupils by his side. Bharat ought to be entertained. Therefore, go and bring bulbs and roots and fruits. They bowed their heads with the words, Very well, and most gladly proceeded to take charge of their respective duties. The sage anxiously thought that he had invited a distinguished guest and that a deity must be worshipped according to his or her rank. Hearing of this riches of various kinds, riddhis, and supernatural powers, siddhis, like anima, the power of assuming atomic size, appeared in visible form and said, We are prepared to do your bidding, O Lord. Bharat, as well as his younger brother and the whole company, are distressed due to their separation from Rama. Entertain them and relieve them of their fatigue, the great sage gladly said. The riches and supernatural powers in their embodied forms bowed to the command of the great sage and deemed themselves highly favored. The Siddhis said to one another, Sri Rama's younger brother Bharat is a guest beyond compare. Bowing at the sage's feet, let us do that which may gratify the whole of the royal party. So saying, they erected beautiful and various patterns, who put to shame by their splendors, which were coveted by immortals. Equipped with the necessaries of all kinds, men servants and maid servants remained in attendance, focusing their attentions on the pleasure of the guests. The Siddhis provided in an instant all the amenities which cannot be dreamt of even in heaven. First of all, they assigned to each of the guests quarters that were charming and comfortable and suited to the taste of the occupant. Thereafter, Bharat and his family were assigned quarters, for such were the instructions given by the sage. By dint of his penance, the great sage provided wealth that astonished the creator Brahma himself. When Bharat beheld the sage's power, the realm of all the rulers of the spheres looked small in his eyes. The luxuries were more than one could describe. The wise would forget their dispassion on seeing them. There were seats and couches, draperies, canopies, groves and gardens, birds and beasts of different species, sweet-scented flowers and fruits tasted like ambrosia, many a lake and pond of limpid water, foods and drinks of an undefiled and innocent character, which were more delicious than nectar and ambrosia, and which the guests would hesitate to accept, like so many ascetics. Every house was supplied with a celestial cow and a tree of paradise. Indra, the king of gods, and his consort, Sachi, grew covetous at their sight. It was the vernal season, and a cool, fragrant, gentle breeze was blowing. Everyone had all the four prizes of life: religious merit, worldly riches, sensuous enjoyment, and final beatitude within one's easy reach. At the sight of luxuries like garlands and sandal paste, unique hospitality shown by the sage by dint of his yogic powers, and sorrow because at a time when they should be abstained from luxuries of every kind, they were being offered the same. Affluence, like the female Chakravaka bird, and Bharata as her mate, were imprisoned together in that night in a cage of the hermitage by the sage's order, which was a sort of play, and they remained there until dawn. Bharat and his party took a dip into the Triveni, the confluence of the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati, the chief of sacred places, and bowed their heads to the sage. Bharat reverently received his orders and blessings, and prostrating himself with him, made much supplication. Accompanied by expert guides and taking the whole host along with him, he proceeded on his journey with his thoughts directed toward Chitrakuta. Holding Sri Rama's friend Guha by the hand, he walked along like the very incarnation of love. He had no shoes and no umbrella over his head, and his love, self-discipline, and austerity and piety were unfeigned. He asked his friend Guha to give him an account of the wanderings of Lakshmana, Sri Rama, and Sita. While Guha narrated the same in soft accents, which he saw the spots where Sri Rama had rested and the trees under which he had halted, the emotion within his breast could not be suppressed. The gods who beheld his condition rained down flowers, and the earth grew soft, and the road became pleasant. The clouds afforded him shade all along, and a delightful and excellent breeze kept blowing. The journey was not so agreeable to Sri Ram as it proved to be for Bharat. The numberless beings, both animate and inanimate, that saw the Lord or were seen by the Lord in their turn, had been rendered fit for the highest state. The sight of Bharat now finally rid them of the disease of transmigration. This was no great thing for Bharat, whom Sri Rama ever cherished in his heart. Even they who utter the name of Rama only once in this world not only reach the other shore themselves, but are also able to take others across. As for Bharat, he is dearly loved by Sri Ram, and is his younger brother too. No wonder then that the journey should be delightful to him. Siddhas, a class of celestial beings, saints and great sages, observed thus and rejoiced at heart to behold Bharat. Indra was filled with anxiety when he saw Bharat's power. The world is good for the good, and vile for the vile. So that ends the reading for this evening. And we'll continue again next week. So thank you very much for your attendance, and please forgive me for the mistakes that I made in the reading. Thank you.